What's good, everybody? It's the Conor with Cap Show. UFC 307 about 2 weeks out. We got the main headline, Alex Pereira versus Khalid Rountree. Look, Alex Pereira, one of the biggest UFC stars right now, and it's well-deserving. I mean, he came on the scene about 2 or 3 years ago, and now he's a top-tier fighter in the UFC. So shout out to Alex Pereira. He's 11-2. He lost to Izzy back in April of 2023, and really that's his only L. He beat Yuri twice. He beat Sean Strickland. He beat Israel Adesanya 2 or 3 times, dating way back to kickboxing back in the day. But we look at Alex Pereira and his body of work, him being 37, him going up to, wants to go up to heavyweight at one point. He's at light heavyweight now. He's an expert at stand-up, at kickboxing, but his only hole is wrestling. But yet, people cannot get Alex Pereira down. It's easier said than done. I mean, how's this fight going to end up at UFC 307, Alex Pereira versus Rountree? I mean, Rountree 14-5 in the UFC, been in the UFC for about a decade now, to whereas Alex Pereira's kind of relatively new in the UFC, yet he's the biggest star, one of the biggest stars. Even though I do think McGregor is still, ticket sales is probably still number one, even though McGregor hasn't fought in 3.5 years in the UFC. Are we going to see McGregor? Is McGregor going to come back early next year? Who knows? I think it's a long shot. I really do. I think Conor McGregor's involved in other things right now, to where he's not worried about fighting. He's not worried about training anymore. The hunger's gone for Conor McGregor. But for McGregor, man, I mention him so much because he's elevated the UFC to what it is right now. Without Conor McGregor, the UFC would not be as big. They probably would have not fought in the Sphere a couple weeks ago. Alex Pereira would maybe not be as big as a superstar if it wasn't for Conor McGregor. So we got to give homage to Conor McGregor, even though we haven't seen him in years in the UFC. Hopefully we'll see him in the spring of 2025. But Alex Pereira right now, probably the top 3 biggest stars in the UFC right now. Hats off to Alex Pereira. In this fight, Rountree, I do think seeing it stand up being a bang-up fight, seeing it being a stand-up fight, so I'm still going to go Alex Pereira in this matchup. Nothing's really convinced me to say, well, you know what I'm saying? I think Alex Pereira's going to get knocked out, even though we saw him get knocked out in 2023 against Israel Adesanya. We saw Adesanya throw that crazy combination and hit him with that overhand right, which really slapped Alex Pereira. And we go back to 2022, the first fight in the UFC with Alex Pereira and Izzy. Izzy rocked him in the end of the first round in their first fight, had him stumbling. 10 more seconds, Israel Adesanya would have won that fight, and the whole dynamic of the UFC would have changed in that aspect of the first fight. But I just think Alex Pereira is really a bona fide killer. He's really about that life. I mean, he walks you down, he sizes you up. He wants to go fight Aspinall eventually one day. Who knows what's going to happen in that? He wants to train with John Jones. I don't think that John Jones, Alex Pereira fight's ever going to happen. Why would it? I just don't see that happening. But right now, Alex Pereira, I think he's going to win this fight at UFC 307. And then we're probably going to see Alex Pereira, in the springtime of next year. Alex Pereira is continuing to fight, continue to build up the resume, and that's what Alex Pereira wants. He wants to be active. And if you're a UFC fighter and you're at the top of your game, you're going to want to be an active fighter. You're going to want to fight 3 or 4 times a year. Probably 4 times a year. I mean, Alex Pereira's fighting 3 or 4 times a year, and he's staying active, staying in the flow, staying in the mojo of things. I mean, I just see Alex Pereira winning this fight. I'm going to take Alex Pereira. He's going to be the heavy favorite in this matchup. I believe it's in Utah, but I'm still taking Alex Pereira by knockout. I think he's going to knock Rountree out. I think it's going to be a battle, even though Rountree does have power hands. He's got bombs in his hands, and I do think he can knock out Alex Pereira at any given moment. That's the part of the UFC. That's what makes UFC so great. It's one mistake, a fighter can capitalize it, whether the fighter's a heavy favorite or a heavy underdog. It does not matter. What matters is, are you going to get the win? That's what matters. But I like Alex Pereira by knockout over Rountree. I think this is going to be an epic matchup. I think it's going to be an epic battle. But I'm going Alex Pereira by knockout over Rountree in this main event. And then we got Raquel Pennington versus Juliana Pena. We remember Juliana beat Amanda Nunes, the greatest woman fighter of all time in MMA history. So shout out to Juliana Pena. She did beat Amanda Nunes back in 2021 from a submission. Then she rematched her in 2022 and lost to Amanda Nunes. And that was the last time Pena's fought, was 2022. It's been 2 years now. So, and I'm talking about being an active fighter. You know, Juliana Pena, I mean, it's like, you know, what are we going to see here? Pennington is the champion. She's 16-9. She lost to Amanda Nunes back in 2018. She did not beat Amanda Nunes. She lost to Holly Holm twice, back in 2020 and 2015. So Pennington's been in the game. She's a vet. She knows what to expect, and I think Juliana Pena's going to shoot for takedowns and try to submit her. I think that's how this fight is going to pan out. However, I just think for Pennington, it's just like, you know, what are you going to do? You know, what is she going to counter Juliana Pena? What's Juliana Pena going to end up trying to do here in this matchup? We saw her against Amanda Nunes when she beat Amanda Nunes in 2021. She was mixing it up, had good stand-up game, had good takedowns. She's going to have to do that. I mean, fighting over 2 years now, it's a break, at least a year and a half of away from fighting. You know, that's going to take a toll. So I don't really know who's going to win the women's fight here for the belt. Even though Pennington is the champion right now, Juliana wants to retain that belt that she lost back in 2022. You know, so it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, right now, I'm probably leaning more towards the champion in Pennington right now, the more experienced, the veteran type of fighter. That's who I'm going to lean to. However, Juliana Pena, I mean, she beat Amanda Nunes to go. So, like, obviously, she has a huge upside in her fight, in her capability. And I think if Juliana Pena wins this fight, I do think the winner of Kayla Harrison is going to get that opportunity. I think Kayla Harrison, she's relatively new in the UFC. She fought back at UFC 300. She's on this card at 307. And I think Kayla Harrison is one of those athletes that wants this. That Kayla Harrison is probably going to get the winner of the Pennington-Juliana Pena fight. That's what's going to happen. I can't wait to see how Kayla Harrison develops on the same card right here. So she's definitely going to stay tuned. She's going to be fighting before this championship bout, but it's going to be interesting. It really is. But I do think Kayla Harrison is next in line at that bantamweight fight right here. I do think she deserves the winner of the Pennington-Juliana Pena fight. Why not? I mean, Kayla Harrison ragdolled Holly Holm is what was expected at UFC 300. And I'm telling you, I cannot believe Kayla Harrison made 135. She's probably walking around 160, 165 of pure muscle. So I just think her making the 135 was crazy alone. And her doing that at UFC 300 against Holly Holm, she could do it all. So I can't wait to see Kayla Harrison develop and what's going to be the future potential of either Pennington versus Pena. What's it going to be? But right now, I'm going more towards Pennington right now, but I might change that bet. You know, I'd like to see the fighters walk out. I'd like to see their confidence, their mojo, how they're looking up and leading to this fight. That's what I look at. So, you know, this is going to be a gang time decision here, fight time decision. But right now, I'm leaning more towards the champion in Pennington right now with experience, just because Juliana Pena hasn't fought in a couple years. So is ring rust going to be a factor? Who knows? But I'm leaning more toward Pennington in this fight. And then we got Jose Aldo, been in the UFC for years, been in the fight game since 2004. Like, that's crazy. Over 20 years. 2 decades, Jose Aldo's been in the UFC, just been fighting in general. Maybe not the UFC specifically in 2004, but he's been fighting since 04, dude. Like, the resume speaks for itself. Shout out to Jose Aldo, 32-8. You know, the most memorable fight that I remember from Jose Aldo was fighting Conor McGregor back in 2015. I mean, everybody remembers that fight. It was only like 10-second fight. But I just, looking at Jose Aldo, besides that fight, I mean, the resume speaks for itself, man. He's beaten world champions. He's just overcome adversity throughout his life. He's 100% a future Hall of Famer in the UFC, no doubt about it. I do think this is almost his last fight. I do think, you know, he's towards the end of his career. I mean, Jose Aldo's been fighting for so long. He's fighting a young, hungry 14-2 Marino, some guy I really never heard of. So, you know, this is the fun things about the UFC and MMA world is some of these guys come out of nowhere that you never heard of that could be a future superstar. Who knows? Marino could be a future superstar, but I'm rooting for Jose Aldo, obviously. You know, been in the UFC for so long, 2 decades in the fight game, over 2 decades in the fight game. So homage to Jose Aldo. Who knows what's going to happen with him, but I'm rooting for him. So I'm going to root for him to win this fight, even though I need to look at the matchup more. I just seen Jose Aldo fighting on UFC 307. I'm saying again, dude, Jose Aldo's been fighting for so long, bro. I do think it's his last reign here. I do think he should hang it up after this year in 2024. So that's going to be interesting. And then we got Kayla Harrison is fighting on the same card, like I said, as Pennington and Penna. I can't wait for this matchup. You know, Kayla Harrison really should be undefeated. She's 17-1. She lost back in 2022 when she was not in the UFC. She made her UFC debut at UFC 300, which was a couple months ago, and Kayla Harrison came on the scene. We know she's a great fighter. She's coming from the PFL. We know she was a great fighter then. She can mix it up. She has good, okay stand-up, but great wrestler. She's a wrestler at heart. She can take you down, ground and pound you, just control the whole fight, the dynamic of the fight. I do think there are things that Kayla Harrison does need to work on, like her stamina, her cardio, her stand-up game especially. I do think if she wants to become champion, I do think her stand-up needs to be a little bit better. But I'm going Kayla Harrison in this matchup. I think Kayla Harrison raw dogs this girl who's 14-3. She lost to Pennington back in 2023, so she's experienced in that aspect. So we got to give her that. But I like Kayla Harrison here. I think Kayla Harrison, she understands that if I fight and if I win this fight by a great fashion, I got a UFC title belt shot here. You know, either Pennington or Penna. So I think, Kayla Harrison is ready for that challenge. I can't wait. If Juliana Penna does end up winning the belt back, I do think it's going to be her versus Kayla Harrison. That's what the UFC MMA community wants to see, right? We want to see Kayla Harrison fight Juliana Penna. Why not? Kayla Harrison, a great wrestler. She beats people up. Every fight that I've seen Kayla Harrison in she's dominating the fight. You know what I'm saying? So, I think Kayla Harrison is ready for this moment. I think she's going to dominate and fight the winner of Penna versus Pennington. I can't wait for that matchup. Take off Kayla Harrison. Put on for America. Let's go! And then we got Kevin Holland versus Roman Dolidze. Look, I got Kevin Holland in this matchup. Kevin Holland is 26-11. Roman is 13-3. Really don't know much about this guy. I just know Kevin Holland's been in the trenches. Had to fight Hamzat on short notice. You know, even though he got ragdogged by Chimaev, that fight lasted 2 minutes, if that, which was crazy. But I like Kevin Holland, man. Kevin Holland is one of the most active fighters in UFC roster. He's a guy that's going to show up for Dana White. A guy that's never going to give up. A guy that's going to show up to work and say, hey, let's go. Let's put on our boots on, and I'm ready to fight. Even against Chimaev. Chimaev was like a week's notice, and he said, I'll fight Chimaev. Even though it's going to not be an easy fight, even though he did get ragdogged by Chimaev, Kevin Holland showed up to the fight. And even though he didn't perform the best, he showed up. So I got to go Kevin Holland in this matchup. And then we got the last fight of the prelims. We got Stephen Wonderboy Thompson versus Jaquan Buckley. Shout out to Jaquan Buckley from St. Louis, from the Lou. He's 19-6. That's his overall MMA record right now. I want to say about a month or two ago, or his last couple fights, Jaquan Buckley called out McGregor, wanted to fight McGregor. Everybody was like, bro, this guy's crazy. What is he talking about? Why is he calling out McGregor? Obviously, it's for the money fight. But Buckley, I do think he could beat Wonderboy Stephen Thompson. I do. Wonderboy just got beat by Rob Connaught. That was not a really lopsided fight. He got taken down and manhandled against Rob Connaught. But I just think overall, man, I'm going Buckley here. I'm going Buckley. I think he's a younger fighter. Even though he has less experience than Wonderboy Thompson, I like Buckley here. I think Buckley's going to take him down and utilize his ground and pound and probably win either by knockout or submission. But let me go Buckley in this matchup. But my lock pick all weekend at UFC 307 is definitely Kayla Harrison. Kayla Harrison is my lock pick. Why? Because what I've saw from her at UFC 300, what I saw from her coming from the PFL into the UFC, that whole transition, she's just dominated right now. And she wants that belt, and she wants either Pennington or Penna next. That's who she's going to call out after this fight. I can't wait for that fight, man. It's going to be great. Shout out to Kayla Harrison. But the main fight, Alex Pereira versus Khalil Roundtree, it's going to be epic. I like Pereira by knockout, stone cold. Alex Pereira is a bona fide killer. I'm telling you, top 3 UFC fighters right now on the roster. Shout out to Alex Pereira. Shout out to Roundtree, but I'm going Pereira by knockout, baby. UFC 307. It's the Clown with Cap show. Let's go!